Welcome back. It's really great to have you sitting in with us today.
Absolutely. So glad you could join us.
If you have ever found yourself staring at just a massive, seemingly endless Wikipedia table full of names and dates and statistics, and you thought, there has to be a story hidden in all this data, well, you are in exactly the right place.
Yeah, those tables can be a lot to take in at first glance.
They really can. Today, our deep dive is venturing into a truly data-rich piece of history. We're looking at the sources detailing the Piłka Nożna magazine Plebiscite.
And for those who might not speak Polish, Piłka Nożna translates quite literally to football.
Right, 2 words, foot and ball.
Yeah.
And also, just to clarify right off the bat, when we say plebiscite in this specific context, we aren't talking about, some high-stakes political referendum.
No, not all.
It simply means a massive, highly prestigious poll voted on by sporting journalists.
I mean, it really is a mountain of information when you first open the source. We're looking at decades of annual awards, multiple categories, hundreds of specific player and club names.
It's intense.
It is. To the untrained eye, it can just look like a dry ledger of sporting trivia. But if you know how to read it, and if you take the time to understand the context behind all those columns and rows, it transforms into something else entirely.
It really does.
It becomes a 50-year time capsule.
Okay, let's unpack this by defining our mission for today. We are going to cut through that overwhelming wall of data to extract the real narrative here.
Because there is a huge narrative.
Exactly, because this isn't just a list of who is good at kicking a ball in any given year. It chronicles a nation's sporting evolution.
That's the perfect way to put it.
We are going to map out the rise of local hometown heroes in the 1970s, trace the massive shift toward the global superstardom we see today, and really just watch the modernization of the sport itself unfold year by year.
It is a perfect reflection of how a country's relationship with its favorite sport evolves over half a century. You can literally trace the economic and cultural shifts of European football just by looking at who wins these awards.
And crucially, what clubs they're playing for when they win them.
Yes, that club column is everything. But to understand the true weight of the Piłka Nożna plebiscite, we really have to look at the landscape before 1973.
Right, so what did that landscape actually look like? Were there just no awards at all before this magazine stepped in?
There were awards, but they were somewhat sporadic. Prior to 1973, Polish football honors were primarily run by a Katowice-based weekly newspaper called Sport.
Okay, so a different publication.
Exactly. They held polls, but they lacked a certain definitive annual consistency. There was actually a gap in 1980, for instance, where no award was given at all.
Oh, wow. So just a blank year in the records.
Right. And that lack of a unified, undeniable record, it kind of left a vacuum. That is when the journalists at the Polish Football Weekly, Piłka Nożna, stepped in to organize their own plebiscite.
Which changed everything.
It did. That initiative finally brought a strict annual consistency. And, consequently, a massive level of prestige to the process of honoring the country's best talent.
Looking at that inaugural class of winners in 1973 really grounds you in the history of the sport.
It sets the baseline.
It does. The very first Player of the Year award went to Kazimierz Deyna. He was a legendary midfielder playing for Legia Warsaw at the time. Just a true icon of the era.
An absolute legend.
And the first ever newcomer of the year went to Mirosław Blazaki. It is fascinating to think about what it must have felt like to be the very first names etched into a record that would end up spanning over 50 years.
It established an institution essentially overnight. And looking at the broader context of that era is vital for anyone trying to understand the data. The late 70s and early 80s, they read like a who's who of a genuine golden era in Polish football.
They really do.
You see absolute legends of the game taking the top prize. Zbigniew Boniek won it in 1978 and again in 1982. Grzegorz Lato took the honors in 1981. Henryk Kaspersak won back-to-back in 1976 and 1977.
And if you look closely at the source material for those early years, something really stands out about where those legends were actually playing.
The club affiliations.
Yes. We aren't seeing names like Real Madrid or Manchester United next to these winners. You see clubs like Stal Mielec, Ruch Korzo, and Widzew Odu completely dominating the winner's circle.
What's fascinating here is what those club names represent about the era.
Tell me more about that.
Well, for example, you see winners from Stal Mielec, which was a club heavily supported by and built around local steel workers.
Right, hence the name Stal, meaning steel.
Exactly. Then you see Ruch Korzo, a club emerging straight from the industrial heartlands of the country. It paints a picture of a highly localized, gritty, working-class football landscape.
Very different from today.
Completely different. It was an era long before the modern mega-money TV deals completely transformed the sport into a global corporate enterprise.
So if all the top talent was completely domestic, did the rest of Europe even notice Polish football at the time? Or did that domestic isolation force the local game to evolve in its own unique way?
Oh, the rest of Europe certainly noticed, especially during major international tournaments. But the day-to-day ecosystem was deeply domestic. The best players in the country were retained at home.
So the fans could just take a bus down the street to see the best player in the country.
Exactly. You didn't have to look to Spain or England to find the Polish Player of the Year. They were playing right in the local stadiums. But to address your second point, that intense domestic focus did force a deeper look at the tactical side of the game locally.
Or the strategy of it all.
Yeah. The organizers of the Plebiscite quickly realized that the game wasn't just about the players on the pitch.
Which explains the first major expansion of the trophy cabinet in the data. It started with just Player of the Year and Newcomer of the Year in 1973. But by 1975, they recognized they needed to honor the tactical minds behind these domestic powerhouses.
They had to acknowledge the managers.
Right. So they added the Coach of the Year category. Leszek Jezierski was the very first recipient for his work managing Widzew.
Adding the Coach of the Year category was a vital step. It acknowledged that football was becoming a much more sophisticated strategic discipline. And over the decades, looking at the coaching data reveals its own compelling narrative.
It really does.
We see some absolute titans establish dominance in a profession that is, let's face it, notoriously volatile and unforgiving. Managers usually get fired after a few bad months.
There is a great trivia nugget hidden in the coaching category if you ever find yourself needing a tiebreaker at a sports trivia night. Two names stand head and shoulders above the rest in the data.
Franciszek Smuda and Paulianas.
Yes. They hold the joint record with 4 Coach of the Year wins each.
To win 4 times as a manager is an incredible feat of longevity. Their wins span across different domestic clubs, and in Giannis's case, even managing the national team.
Which is a totally different skill set.
Completely. It requires an incredible ability to adapt to different locker rooms, different generations of players, and constantly shifting tactical trends.
But as the 70s and 80s bled into the 90s and early 2000s, the borders of European football really began to open up.
The Bozeman ruling, the fall of the Iron Curtain, everything changed.
Exactly. And the data in the Plebiscite shifts dramatically to reflect a newly connected world. Here's where it gets really interesting. They added a Foreigner of the Year category, which just feels like a major cultural milestone for a domestic league.
It absolutely was a milestone. The inclusion of the Foreigner of the Year category entirely signifies the globalization of the Polish league.
It's an admission that the world is getting smaller.
Yes. It served as an official acknowledgement that the growth and success of Polish football were now being actively shaped by international talent, both on the pitch and on the touchline.
You look at the list and see winners like Duszan Radulski taking the award in 2003 for his work with Dyskobolia Grodzisk Wielkopolski.
A great example.
But perhaps the most jarring entry for a traditionalist at the time would have been Leo Binhacker winning it in 2006.
Oh, Binhacker's win is incredibly significant. He won the Foreigner of the Year award, but he wasn't playing or managing in the domestic league.
Right, he was managing the national team.
Exactly. He was a Dutchman managing the Poland men's national team. Bringing in a foreign manager to run the national squad was a huge shock to the system for many.
A lot of local pride on the line.
Yeah, but winning this award showed a widespread journalistic recognition of the impact international expertise was having on the country's footballing identity.
That opening of borders, conceptually speaking, eventually led to the most vital modernization of the awards. It took a frustratingly long time, but in 2015, they finally shattered the glass ceiling and introduced the Women's Player of the Year category.
It was a massively overdue recognition. The women's game had been growing steadily in prominence, professionalism, and tactical sophistication.
You just couldn't ignore it anymore.
No. By the time 2015 rolled around, ignoring that half of the sport was no longer a tenable position for a plebiscite claiming to represent the entirety of Polish football.
The inaugural winner of the Women's Player of the Year was Katarzyna Kicierzynek. And looking at her club affiliation, Paris Saint-Germain immediately tells you that the Women's Award didn't start in a localized domestic era like the Men's Award did in the 70s.
That's a really sharp observation.
It started right in the middle of the globalized international era. Kazimierz was already competing at the absolute pinnacle of European club football.
That is a brilliant distinction to make. The women's winners were instantly reflecting that international export pipeline. And it is wonderful to see that the progression of the awards hasn't stalled out.
They are still expanding.
Yes, the Plebiscite is still actively evolving to capture the full spectrum of the sport today.
We see that evolution right up to our current era. Just last year, in 2025, they introduced the brand new Women's Newcomer of the Year category.
A great addition.
The very first winner was Paulina Tomasiak, playing for Górnik Ishna. Building out this infrastructure of recognition is so important because it gives younger players a tangible roadmap of success to aspire to.
It provides a much more complete, holistic picture of the footballing landscape. However, even with all this expansion...
Right, the new categories, the women's game, the foreigners.
Exactly. Even with all of that, there is one narrative thread in this data that threatens to completely eclipse everything else.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say. Because looking at this data, you just have to pause. One name just swallows the entire list for over a decade.
It's hard to even comprehend.
If you are scanning the columns from the late 2000s onward, the mathematical odds of holding the top spot for as long as this player did are just staggering. Robert Lewandowski's record is an absolute anomaly.
It is unprecedented in the history of this award. And frankly, it is rare to see this level of individual monopolization in any major sporting honor anywhere in the world.
As of 2026, Robert Lewandowski has won the Player of the Year award 13 times.
13.
At a certain point, he must have just run out of mantelpiece space in his house.
He had to build a new wing just for these trophies.
To put that astronomical number into perspective for you, the next highest multiple winner in the entire 50-year history of the Plebiscite is E.B. Smolarek, who has 3 wins.
And 3 wins is huge.
Right. Smolarek achieved a highly impressive three-peat from 2005 to 2007. 3 wins is a fantastic Hall of Fame caliber career. 13 wins is a monopoly.
It is a level of sustained excellence that almost defies logic. But what the sources allow us to do is track his chronological footprint. We can see this dominance build year by year, club by club.
He didn't just appear fully formed as a global superstar. Let's trace that path because it really is the ultimate footballing journey. He first pops up in the sources in 2008 as the Newcomer of the Year. At that time, he was playing domestically for Znicz Brzko and Lech Poznan.
Just a highly touted young talent making his mark in the local leagues.
The progression from that point is incredibly rapid. By the very next year, 2009, he is named the Ekstraklasa Player of the Year.
And just to give that context, the Ekstraklasa is the top-tier domestic league in Poland.
So he had completely conquered the local landscape by his early 20s.
And then the floodgates open.
From 2011 all the way to 2025, he essentially owns the main Player of the Year award. You can trace his climb through the elite ranks of European football right there in the winner's table.
It's a map of his career.
He starts winning it while making his name at Borussia Dortmund in Germany. Then he continues his tyrannical reign through his peak years at Bayern Munich. And he is still winning it while playing for Barcelona in Spain.
The consistency is staggering. But honestly, in a reign that long, what almost highlights his dominance more than his wins are the rare interruptions.
The years someone else actually managed to win.
Yes. You have to look at the years he didn't win during that 15-year span to truly appreciate the grip he had on the award.
There are only 2 blips on his radar during that entire era. Łukasz Fabiański won it in 2018, and Piotr Zisuski took the award in 2023. What kind of season does it actually take to unseat a 13-time winner?
It requires an individual performance that is absolutely undeniable to the voting journalists. It has to be a season so spectacular or a narrative so compelling that it momentarily breaks the gravitational pull of Lewandowski's legacy.
Because momentum is a real thing in voting.
It is. It underscores just how incredibly high the bar was set. You had to have a career-defining year just to edge him out once.
While Lewandowski's sheer number of trophies is an anomaly, the pattern of absolute dominance at the top of the sport isn't exclusive to the men's game.
Not at all.
When we look at the Women's Player of the Year category, we see a striking parallel with Ewa Pajor. She has established a massive stranglehold of her own.
Her trajectory commands the exact same narrative weight. Since the Women's Award was introduced and matured, Pajor has been the defining force.
Looking at the sources, she has won multiple times, taking the trophy in 2018 and 2019, and then going on a massive, uninterrupted run from 2022 through 2025.
Incredible consistency.
And just like Lewandowski, Her club trajectory tells a story of reaching the absolute highest echelons of the global game. She is winning these awards while playing for massive, elite international clubs like VfL Wolfsburg in Germany and Barcelona in Spain.
They are essentially on the same path.
It is parallel dominance, showcasing how top Polish talent, regardless of gender, is now anchoring the biggest clubs in the world.
Which brings us to a really interesting conceptual point in our analysis. We have looked at the history, the localized beginnings, the expansion of categories, and these modern eras of individual dominance.
So how do we tie this all together? If you are listening to this, and maybe you aren't a diehard follower of the Polish Ekstraklasa, why does this long list of names matter to the broader sporting world?
It's a valid question.
Think of it this way. Reading this Wikipedia table is exactly like reading the tree rings of European sports.
That is a perfect analogy. If we connect this to the bigger economic picture, the sources vividly illustrate the talent export pipeline that has completely redefined modern European football over the last 50 years.
Right, from local to global.
Think back to our discussion about the 1970s and early 80s. The winners all played for domestic clubs. Stal Milek, Widzew Odu. The talent was kept at home.
But then you look at 1982, Zbigniew Boniek wins the award, but the club listed next to his name is Juventus in Italy.
A massive moment.
When Boniek went to Juventus, it wasn't just a standard transfer, it was a massive cultural event. Poland was still behind the Iron Curtain at that time.
Politically, economically, it was a completely divided Europe.
Exactly. Seeing a Polish star command the stage in a wealthy Western European league like Italy's Serie A was a monumental point of national pride. And it signaled a major shift in the economic realities of the sport.
Exactly. It was the first major crack in that localized ecosystem. Now, trace the clubs of the winners as the years progress. The trickle becomes a flood.
The names just keep getting bigger.
You see Jerzy Dudek winning the award in 2000 while playing for Feyenoord in the Netherlands. You see Wojciech Szczesny winning Newcomer of the Year in 2011 while playing for Arsenal in the English Premier League. And we already mentioned Piotr Zielinski winning in 2023 while at Napoli.
The list of clubs reads like a map of where the financial center of gravity in football has shifted over the decades.
It really does.
It is a visual representation of how the global scouting network expanded and how top talent inevitably gravitates toward the biggest and most economically powerful leagues in Europe.
But there's another layer to this data, beyond just the economics of where individuals are playing. The plebiscite also acts as a barometer for the pulse of national pride. And you see this most clearly when you look at the Team of the Year category.
That category might be the most fascinating one to track because it fluctuates so wildly depending on the mood of the country.
It is incredibly volatile.
Sometimes it reflects moments of pure, unified national euphoria. You look at the data and see the Poland men's national team winning Team of the Year in 2001, 2004, and 2015.
Those were huge years.
Those were years where the national team captured the imagination of the entire country, usually through thrilling major tournament qualifications or standout performances on the international stage that brought everyone together.
But then in other years, the mood shifts inward. The award reflects the emergence of a dominant domestic dynasty that simply cannot be ignored. A perfect example in the recent data is Rakow Częstochowa. They took the Team of the Year prize in 2020, 2021, and 2023.
What makes a local club beat out the national team for that honor?
It signifies a period where a domestic club achieved something so structurally and competitively remarkable within the local league that it overshadowed the national team in the eyes of the voting journalists.
A compelling local narrative.
Exactly. Rakow's rise was a phenomenal story of building a powerhouse. It shows the constant push and pull in the voting between celebrating local, grassroots success and aspiring to international glory.
It really is incredible how much narrative is baked into this one seemingly simple Wikipedia article.
You just have to know where to look.
What initially looked like an overwhelming ledger of names and dates is actually a thrilling 50-year documentary of a nation's sporting evolution. We have traced the journey from local working-class heroes playing in a purely domestic ecosystem in the 1970s, all the way to 13-time global superstars commanding the stage at the biggest, wealthiest clubs in the world today.
It is a testament to the power of structured data to tell a profoundly human story about ambition, economics, and cultural shifts. But as we wrap up our analysis of this history, looking specifically at that modern era of individual dominance we discussed, it does leave us with a fascinating dynamic to consider.
What is the final takeaway you want to leave everyone with?
We have to remember that this plebiscite is voted on by human journalists, When you have a player like Robert Lewandowski winning 13 times over 15 years, it forces us to ask a difficult question about how history is recorded.
Right, the human element of voting.
Exactly. At what point does a player's historical legacy make it impossible for voters to view anyone else objectively? Does a 13-time winner represent an undeniable mathematical gap in physical talent compared to his peers?
Or does the story just become too big?
Right. Does it eventually represent the incredible power of a narrative, a status quo that voters simply can't let go of, even when other players might be having statistically superior individual seasons?
That is a great question.
It is something to keep in mind the next time you see any Player of the Year trophy handed out in any sport. Are we rewarding the best year, or are we rewarding the biggest legend?